The impossible odds, the cold metal walls of the training room, echoed with the sound of boots marching in sync. A group of soldiers stood in tight rows, their eyes fixed on the human cadet who was about to face a mission unlike any other. She stood, tall, her expression calm, her gaze unwavering. Her name was Cadet Alina, and today she was about to prove something that no one, not even the most experienced soldiers, believed was possible. The commanders had looked at her, a young human cadet, and gave her a simple statement. You have a 2% chance of surviving this mission. The words had hung in the air, thick with doubt. It wasn't the first time Cadet Alina had been underestimated. But this was different. This was the biggest test of her life, and the odds were against her. The simulation was meant to be impossible. No one had ever survived it, and yet Alina wasn't afraid. She was ready. The alien commanders, seated at the edge of the room, watched her with a mix of amusement and disbelief. They had seen humans fail time and time again, and this cadet was no different. Or so they thought. 2%, Commander Zether said to his fellow officers. What do you think? Will she last 5 minutes? I give her 3, another officer replied with a shrug. Humans are weak, and this simulation is designed to break them. Alina's heart raced, but on the outside she remained still. She didn't care what the commanders thought. She had learned long ago that the strongest weapon wasn't physical strength. It was the power of the mind. And right now she was. Focused on one thing, surviving. The simulation began. The room transformed before her eyes, the walls vanishing into a vast, hostile environment. The ground beneath her feet shifted, and the sound of distant explosions filled the air. The sky was a sickly green, and dark clouds churned ominously overhead. The terrain was alien barren, with sharp cliffs and deadly valleys. Objective: survive. A robotic voice echoed from the speakers, followed by a countdown. Prepare to engage enemy forces. Cadet Alina's mind sharpened as she surveyed the landscape. She could hear the distant sounds of alien ships hovering, searching for her. The commanders had designed this scenario to break her spirit. They believed she would fail. They thought they knew everything about her. But what they didn't realize was that Alina had a plan of her own. She had studied this simulation for weeks, memorizing every detail. Every shift in the environment, every tactic used by the alien forces, it was all etched in her mind. She knew that the 2% survival rate wasn't just a statistic. It was a test, yes, but it was also a game. And she was about to change the rules. Crouched low, moving quickly through the rocky terrain. The first enemy patrol appeared ahead, their cloaked figures barely visible against the green sky. Alina's pulse quickened, but she didn't hesitate. She moved into position, silent as a shadow, and waited. The alien soldiers passed by, oblivious to her presence. It was a small victory, but it felt good. She had already outsmarted them. The first hurdle was cleared, but there were many more ahead. Back in the control room, the commanders were watching closely. They had expected the cadet to be discovered within minutes. But she was moving too carefully, too strategically. She wasn't following the usual patterns. She wasn't acting like the other human cadets who had failed before her. She's doing better than expected, Commander Zether muttered, leaning forward in his chair. Still, she's only delayed the inevitable. No human has ever completed this simulation, another officer replied. But Alina wasn't just surviving. She was thinking ahead, calculating each step with precision. She knew the simulation was more than just about avoiding enemies. It was about making them underestimate her at every turn. As she moved deeper into the simulation, the challenges grew more difficult. The ground began to tremble as massive alien war machines rose from the earth, their weapons primed for destruction. The air was filled with the sound of engines roaring, and the ground seemed to shake with each step they took. But Alina didn't flinch. She had been preparing for this. The next part of her plan was already in motion. She found an abandoned structure, partially hidden behind a cliff. Inside, there were crates of alien technology, weapons, gadgets, and tools that would give her an advantage. She quickly accessed the control panel and began hacking into the system. The alien technology was advanced, but Alina had been trained in every system, every piece of tech. It didn't take long before she had control over several of the war machines that were now patrolling the area. Back in the command room, the officers were starting to realize something was wrong. They watched as several of their own machines began to move erratically. A few of them even started to turn on their fellow soldiers. How is she doing this? Commander Zether demanded, his voice rising. She shouldn't have access to that technology. But it was too late. Alina had already hacked into the system, and she wasn't about to let anyone stop her now. She watched as the war machines attacked their own forces, creating chaos. She was no longer just surviving. She was in control. The minutes ticked by, and with each passing second, Alina's survival rate continued to climb. She wasn't just fighting to survive. She was fighting to win. And the aliens were starting to realize that maybe, just maybe, they had underestimated the human cadet. As the simulation continued, the tension in the control room grew. The commanders had no idea how to stop her. She had already broken every expectation they had set, and with every passing minute, Alina's 2% chance of survival seemed to grow less and less significant. Training day. The unexpected secret. Sound of Alina's boots echoed through the dark hallways of the training facility as she made her way toward the next phase of her mission. It had been hours since the simulation began, and the cadet was already far ahead of the schedule the commanders had set for her. The 2% survival rate seemed less and less likely as time went on. But as she moved through the cold metal corridors, her mind wasn't focused on the odds. It was focused on one thing, the truth. For most cadets, the simulation was a test of skill, strength, and endurance. But Alina knew something that no one else did. This wasn't just a test. This was her chance to prove that humanity was capable of more than the aliens gave them credit for. She wasn't fighting for survival anymore. She was fighting for something greater, the survival of her people. Inside the facility, the alien commanders were beginning to take notice. Their eyes were fixed on the screens, watching Alina move through the simulation with a mix of shock and curiosity. She was doing better than any human before her. Much better. Commander Zether's eyes narrowed as he watched her hacking into their systems. How is this possible? He muttered under his breath. Humans are supposed to be predictable. But this one, she's different. A younger officer beside him leaned in, still watching the screens. She must have an advantage. There's no way she could survive this long without some form of assistance. Zether shook his head. We've eliminated all external support. She's doing this on her own. His voice was laced with disbelief. Back in the simulation, Alina had already moved past the war machines. With the weapons she had acquired, she was now faced with the next obstacle, the alien soldiers guarding the final objective. They were positioned in a fortified area, unaware that their own technology was being turned against them. But Alina wasn't rushing into battle. She knew better than to charge in headfirst. This was her plan, a plan that had been set in motion long before the simulation had begun. She crouched behind a large boulder, surveying the enemy positions. Her breathing was steady, her mind calm. She was used to being in situations where the odds were stacked against her, but this was different. This was about proving a point. She was human, and she wasn't going to back down. As she examined the soldiers, her fingers moved quickly over the control panel she had found earlier. She had hacked into their system, but that was only part of the plan. The real secret lay in what the aliens didn't know. She wasn't just learning how to fight. She was learning how to use their weaknesses against them. The aliens believed they knew everything about humanity. They thought they understood how humans would react in a crisis, how they would approach a battle. But they had made one critical mistake. They underestimated the power of the human mind. And Alina was proving them wrong at every turn. The sound of alien voices crackled through the speakers. She knew the soldiers were talking about her, discussing their plans to corner her. They were confident. But Alina had already thought several steps ahead. She knew exactly what they were going to do. And she knew exactly how to stop them. With a few quick movements, she activated the alien defense systems that were supposed to be locked down tight. But Alina had cracked their code, and now she was in control. The soldiers had no idea what was coming. As the first wave of enemy soldiers advanced, Alina set her trap. She watched through the cameras as they made their way toward her position. They were getting closer, much closer. She waited. And then, in one swift motion, she triggered the system. The alien defense systems sprang to life, catching the soldiers off guard. The automated turrets fired, and explosions rocked the area. The soldiers scrambled, their plans falling apart. In seconds, the cadet remained hidden, a quiet smile playing on her lips. She had done it. She had turned the aliens' own technology against them, just as she had planned. But this was only the beginning. Back in the command room, the commanders were in chaos. The officers shouted orders, but it was too late. Their soldiers were retreating, and the machines they had trusted were now turning on them. Zether's face was pale with disbelief. This. This can't be happening, Zether muttered, gripping the edge of his chair. How is she controlling everything? Another officer scrambled to input commands, trying to regain control of the simulation. But nothing was working. The cadet had already thought of everything. She had anticipated every move, every weakness. She's not just surviving, another officer said, his voice trembling. She's winning. Zether slammed his fist onto the control panel. No, this ends now, but it was too late. Alina wasn't just a cadet anymore. She was a force to be reckoned with. And as the simulation continued, the aliens began to realize that they had made a grave mistake in underestimating humanity. They hadn't just created a simulation. They had created a battleground where the human spirit would rise. As Alina moved deeper into the simulation, her path was clear. The odds had been stacked against her. The alien commanders had given her a 2% chance of survival, but she had already proven that she was capable of so much more, and they had no idea what was coming next. First challenge, the air was thick with tension as Alina stepped deeper into the simulation. The alien soldiers had been outsmarted for now, but she knew this was only the beginning. The real test was coming. The first major challenge was ahead, and she had no choice but to face it head on. She crouched low, listening to the eerie sounds of the alien world around her. The sky above was still a sickly green, and the ground beneath her feet trembled with the distant rumble of an approaching enemy. She had seen the simulation's blueprints, and she knew exactly what was coming. A massive force of enemy troops, well armed and ready to crush anyone who stood in their way. It was a trap, one that was designed to be impossible to escape. Alina's heart pounded in her chest, but her mind remained calm. She had faced far worse challenges than this. This was just another obstacle to overcome. As she moved silently through the rocky terrain, she activated her holographic map. It showed the locations of the enemy soldiers, who were now spreading out in search of her. The trap was closing in, but Alina wasn't worried. She had learned a valuable lesson in the last part of the simulation. It wasn't about brute force. It was about being smarter than your opponent. Ahead, she saw them 24 alien soldiers, their weapons raised as they scoured the area. They moved like a well-oiled machine, their movements precise and calculated. But they hadn't counted on her ability to think outside the box. Elena watched them from behind a boulder, her breathing steady. She had a plan, and she wasn't going to waste it. The aliens were coming closer now, unaware that they were walking straight into a trap of her own making. Elena pulled out a small device from her belt, a cloaking grenade. She had found it hidden inside one of the alien tech crates earlier. It was a simple device, but it had the power to turn her invisible for a short time. Just enough to get close and take out the first wave before the rest even knew what was happening. She activated the grenade, tossing it just behind the group of soldiers. In an instant, the device released a shimmering pulse of energy, making Elena disappear from sight. She crept forward, her movements silent, her mind focused entirely on her target. The soldiers continued their search, unaware that their deaths were only moments away. Elena took a deep breath, and then, with lightning speed, she pounced. She moved like a shadow, striking the first soldier with a swift blow to the back of the neck. The alien dropped instantly, his weapon clattering to the ground. The rest of the soldiers turned, but it was too late. Elena was already on the next target, disarming him before he had time to react. She fought with the precision of a machine, each movement carefully calculated. She wasn't just surviving, she was fighting back, and the aliens had no idea how to stop her. The remaining soldiers scattered, firing their weapons wildly in every direction. Elena didn't panic. Instead, she used their confusion to her advantage. She ducked behind a rock, her mind racing as she assessed the situation. She knew there were more soldiers coming, but this first wave was nearly finished. She just needed to finish the job before the others arrived. The cloaking effect from the grenade was wearing off, but Elena was ready. As she came out of cover, she grabbed a weapon from one of the fallen aliens and fired, hitting the next soldier with a well-placed shot. The alien dropped to the ground with a sharp cry, but Elena didn't stop. She moved faster, using the environment to her advantage, and in moments, the first wave of soldiers was no more. But as she wiped the sweat from her brow and prepared to move on, the next challenge appeared. The ground shook beneath her feet, and a loud roar echoed through the air. A massive alien war machine, nearly 3 stories tall, emerged from the horizon, its cannons aimed directly at her position. Elena froze for a moment, staring up at the towering machine. It was heavily armored, with energy shields that could withstand even the most powerful weapons. There was no way she could take it down head-on. It was designed to wipe out entire armies, and it wasn't going to let her escape. Machine's laser sights locked onto her position, and a voice crackled from a loudspeaker, booming across the battlefield. "Human cadet, you have no chance. Surrender now." Elena's heart raced, but she refused to be intimidated. She knew the aliens thought they had her cornered. They thought they could easily destroy her. But Elena had learned how to use the environment to her advantage, and she wasn't about to let this machine stand in her way. The war machine began to move forward, its heavy footsteps shaking the ground. It fired a warning shot, sending a blast of energy into the air just above Elena's head. She ducked quickly, feeling the heat from the blast on her skin. But instead of running, she moved into action. She had one chance. She had to disable the war machine's weapon systems before it could fire again. The only way in was a narrow ventilation shaft located on the side of the machine. It was a long shot, but it was her only option. Elena sprinted toward the war machine, her legs pumping as fast as they could go. The machine's cannons fired again, the blast missing her by inches. She dove toward the ventilation shaft, grabbing the edge and pulling herself up just in time. She could hear the sound of the machine's cannons charging again, but this time it was too late. Inside the war machine, she quickly accessed the control panel. Using the alien technology, she had learned to hack earlier. Sweat dripped down her face as she worked quickly, bypassing the security systems and reprogramming the machine's core. With a final press of a button, the war machine's weapon system shut down, and its massive frame froze in place. Alina sat back, breathing heavily. She had done it. The first challenge had been completed, and once again, she had defied the impossible odds. But as she looked around, she knew this was just the beginning. There were still many more obstacles ahead, and the aliens were not about to make things easy for her. They were watching, and they would not stop until she was defeated. But Alina wasn't ready to give up. Not yet. Not ever. The twist of fate, the battle, was far from over. Alina knew that. She had taken down wave after wave of alien soldiers, and had even outsmarted one of their most powerful war machines. But as the dust settled and the smoke cleared, a new feeling crept into her heart. Doubt. The aliens were beginning to realize that this wasn't just another cadet. Alina wasn't following the patterns they had set for her. She wasn't just surviving. She was rewriting their entire plan. As Alina moved through the alien landscape, the ground suddenly shifted beneath her. The once stable rocks now cracked and split, sending tremors through the earth. A low hum filled the air, vibrating with power. She felt the change in the air before she saw it. Out of the shadows, massive figures emerged, alien creatures unlike anything she had faced before. These were not soldiers. They were something far worse. The aliens' elite forces, beasts bred for war, tall and terrifying, their bodies armored in dark, reflective plating. Their eyes glowed in eerie red, and their weapons hummed with deadly energy. Alina had no time to prepare. The creatures advanced, their eyes fixed on her. They were bigger, stronger, and faster than anything she had fought before. But she wasn't afraid. She had been in tough situations before. But this was different. The air crackled with tension as the first of the creatures charged. Alina ducked behind a large boulder, narrowly avoiding the blow of a massive energy blade. The creature snarled, its teeth bared like a predator ready to strike. It was faster than anything she had seen, and for a moment she hesitated. But then the words of her trainer echoed in her mind. Never hesitate. Act, don't think. Survival depends on speed. Alina snapped back into focus, her survival instincts kicking in. She rolled to the side just as the beast swung its blade again. The blow missed, but the creature's sheer force caused the ground to quake beneath her. She scrambled to her feet, using the alien environment to her advantage. She knew she couldn't face these creatures head-on, not without risking everything. Instead, she had to be smarter. She had to make them underestimate her. As the creature lunged for her again, she grabbed a nearby weapon, a high-powered alien blaster, and fired. The blast hit the creature square in the chest, but it barely flinched. Alina's eyes widened. These creatures were built for war, designed to withstand massive attacks. She had no choice but to retreat. Alina dashed into the rocky canyon, her mind racing. She needed a plan, and fast. The creatures were closing in, and she couldn't outrun them forever. She glanced around, looking for anything that could give her an edge. That's when she saw it, a narrow path that led up to a high ledge above the canyon. It was risky, but it was her only chance. If she could reach it, she could find a way to turn the tide. But the creatures were already upon her, their glowing red eyes locked on her every move. The first one reached her, its claws slashing through the air. Alina dodged, narrowly avoiding the strike. She had no time to waste. She sprinted for the ledge, her heart pounding in her chest. The creature gave chase, its heavy footsteps shaking the ground as it pursued her. Just as Alina reached the ledge, she leapt, grabbing the rocky surface above her. She pulled herself up just in time, narrowly avoiding the creature's claws, as They swiped at her legs. She had made it. For now. But as Alina caught her breath, a voice crackled through her earpiece. It was the same robotic voice that had guided her through the simulation. Warning. Unforeseen complication detected. Alien. Forces have adapted. Previous parameters are no longer valid. Alina froze. She hadn't expected this. The aliens had changed the rules. They were no longer playing by the same strategy. This wasn't just about surviving anymore. They were testing her in ways she hadn't anticipated. She gritted her teeth, realizing that this was no longer just a test. The simulation had become real, and the aliens had no intention of letting her leave alive. Back in the control room, Commander Zether's eyes flickered with anger. He watched the screen, seeing Alina make her way up the canyon. She had survived far longer than he expected, and now it was clear that the simulation wasn't going according to plan. She's adapting, Zether muttered, his voice laced with frustration. How is she doing this? His officers scrambled to input new commands, but the cadet was already one step ahead. Every move she made was unpredictable, and they could no longer predict her actions. They had underestimated her, and now they were paying the price. The voice from the control room spoke again. All backup protocols activated. This simulation is now a live combat situation. The cadet's survival is no longer guaranteed. Zether slammed his fist onto the control panel. Get her. I want her eliminated now. But it was too late. Alina had already disappeared into the depths of the canyon, her mind focused on the next move. The creatures were still out there, but now she understood something the aliens didn't. She wasn't just surviving. She was outsmarting them. And no matter how many times they changed the rules, she would always find a way to win. Alina paused for a moment, her heart racing, but her resolve unbroken. She had survived against the odds, once again, proving that she was far more than the aliens had ever expected. But deep down, she knew this was only the beginning. The aliens had just raised the stakes, and she had no choice but to rise to the challenge. The twist of fate had come, and Alina was ready to face it head-on. Revealing the hidden agenda, the wind howled through the narrow canyon, its chilling gusts, biting at Alina's skin as she crouched behind a jagged rock formation. She had barely escaped the alien creature's grasp, but she knew the worst was still to come. The aliens were no longer underestimating her. They had adapted to her every move, changing the rules of the game. She had no choice but to stay one. Step ahead, or all would be lost. Alina took a deep breath, trying to steady her racing heart. Her mind was sharp, but the pressure was beginning to take its toll. The world around her felt different now. The once familiar battlefield was no longer just a simulation. She could feel that something was off. The aliens were hiding something. They weren't just testing her. They were using her. Her hand instinctively reached for the small device tucked into her belt. The secret she had been carrying all this time was finally ready to be revealed. She had trained for this moment, prepared for the twist that would come when the stakes grew too high. The moment had arrived, and there was no turning back. Back in the control room, the alien commanders watched Alina's every move. They had thought they could control the simulation, but with each passing moment, it became clear that she was no longer the pawn they had hoped for. She was the one in control now, and they didn't like it. Commander Zether's eyes narrowed as he studied the screen. What is she doing? He muttered to himself. She should have been dead by now. Alina had outwitted them at every turn, surviving their toughest challenges and defying every expectation. The aliens had never encountered a human like her. She wasn't just a soldier. She was a strategist, a survivor, and she was about to turn the tables in ways they couldn't even begin to imagine. For weeks, the aliens had believed that Alina was part of a special test, a high-stakes training exercise meant to determine the human race's potential. But what they didn't know was that Alina had been chosen for this mission for a very different reason. The truth was simple. This wasn't just a test. It was a carefully orchestrated mission to infiltrate the alien forces. Alina wasn't just surviving to prove a point. She had been trained to do this for years, to fight, to adapt, and most importantly, to find the weakness the aliens had hidden in their systems. The Cadet's mission had never been about passing a simple simulation. It was about discovering the secrets of the alien empire, infiltrating their defenses, and exposing their true plans. And now, as she moved deeper into the alien facility, the truth was about to be revealed. Alina pulled out the device she had been hiding, a small, sleek piece of alien technology that had been implanted in her the moment she joined the military. It wasn't just for communication or tracking. This device was a tool, a key that would allow her to access the most secret and dangerous parts of the alien network. She had been trained to use it, to manipulate it, to unlock the codes that could bring the alien empire to its knees. The device hummed to life as she activated it. A series of holographic images flickered in front of her, displaying alien schematics, encrypted files, and hidden communication channels. She quickly scanned through the data, her eyes scanning each line of information like a hunter searching for her prey. And then she found it. The alien invasion fleet, the one that had been silently moving toward Earth for months, was not what it seemed. The aliens weren't planning an invasion. They were planning a takeover, one that would leave humanity at their mercy. But what the aliens didn't know was that their plans had already been compromised. Alina had seen the truth, and now she was ready to expose it. She sent the data back to Earth, broadcasting the coordinates of the invasion fleet and the truth behind the aliens' mission. It was all their everything the human military needed to stop the invasion before it ever started. The holograms flickered off as Alina deactivated the device. She stood up, her heart pounding in her chest. She had done it. The alien's secret was out. The invasion would never happen. But as she looked around, a sense of unease settled over her. The aliens had known she was more than just a cadet. They had known she was part of a bigger plan. And now they were ready to take matters into their own hands. Suddenly, the ground shook beneath her feet, and the sound of alien alarms filled the air. The once silent control room behind her came to life as alien soldiers rushed in, their weapons drawn. Alina was surrounded. Commander Zether's voice crackled through the intercom, cold and filled with fury. "You think you've won, human? You've only begun to see the real consequences of your actions." Alina's eyes narrowed. The aliens had tried to control the narrative, but they had underestimated her once again. She had done what they thought impossible. She had uncovered their secret. Now it was time to finish what she had started. The battle was far from over, but Alina wasn't backing down. She had revealed the hidden agenda, and now humanity had a chance. The tides were turning, and the aliens knew it. They were not the only ones with power. Humans had proven their strength, their cunning, and their will to fight. As Alina prepared for the next wave of the alien assault, she knew one thing for certain. The war wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about victory. And with the truth on her side, nothing could stop her. This part reveals Alina's hidden agenda and the true purpose of her mission, giving the story a new layer of intrigue. The alien's response to her actions raises the stakes even higher, setting up the next phase of her battle and pushing the tension to its peak. The final test. The air crackled with electricity as the alien soldiers advanced toward her position. Alina's heart raced, but her mind was sharp and focused. She knew this wasn't just another battle. This was the final test. The aliens had thrown everything they had at her, and now they were ready to end it all. They had underestimated her once too often, but this time She wasn't going to let them win. Her pulse quickened as she assessed the situation. The room she was in was small, surrounded by reinforced walls and a massive door leading into the heart of the alien base. Behind her, the entrance was locked down, but she knew it wouldn't be long before the aliens broke through. She had to move fast. The soldiers outside were methodical in their approach, forming a perimeter to trap her. There were too many of them for her to take on directly, but she wasn't planning on fighting them all head-on. Elena had learned from her previous encounters. She needed to outsmart them, to use their own overconfidence against them. She reached down and grabbed the alien grenade she had found earlier, a device designed to send out an electromagnetic pulse strong enough to disable any alien technology in the area. It was risky, but it was her best shot. Elena tossed the grenade towards the door, and as it exploded with a bright flash, the room plunged into darkness. The alien soldiers hesitated, their systems temporarily disabled by the pulse. Elena knew she didn't have much time. She moved quickly, staying in the shadows, relying on her training and instincts to guide her. She darted to the side, using the confusion to slip past the guards and into the hallway beyond. The pulse had given her the advantage, but it was fleeting. The aliens would regain control soon enough. She needed to find the core of the base and shut down the invasion fleet once and for all. As she moved deeper into the base, the sound of heavy footsteps echoed behind her. The aliens had recovered, and now they were coming for her. Elena didn't hesitate. She ran, pushing herself faster, knowing that this was her last chance. The corridors twisted and turned, the lights flickering. Overhead, she rounded a corner and saw the central control room. Inside, a large display showed the invasion fleet's coordinates, ready to launch. The aliens had planned to wipe out Earth in a matter of days, but they hadn't counted on one thing. Elena. She burst into the control room, startling the officers inside. They reached for their weapons, but she was already on them. With lightning speed, Elena disabled their defenses and hacked into the system. The countdown for the fleets launch was ticking, but she wasn't about to let it happen. The room shook as alarms blared, signaling the breach. Elena knew she had seconds before the entire facility was on high alert. She typed in the final code, overriding the fleet's command systems. The countdown stopped, and the display flickered to black. The aliens' plan had been foiled, but Elena wasn't finished. She turned to face the officers, who had been watching her every move. "It's over," she said, her voice steady despite the chaos around her. "Your invasion ends today." The officers' faces twisted in rage, but they knew she had won. The aliens had underestimated humanity once again, and now they had lost. Elena had done the impossible. She had stopped an entire invasion single-handedly. Was exhausted, every muscle in her body aching, but she didn't stop. She couldn't stop. Earth was counting on her, and she had to make sure the aliens never had a chance to strike again. As she prepared to leave the control room, the final challenge appeared Commander Zether himself. He stepped forward, his eyes burning with fury. "You think you've won, human?" He snarled. "You may have stopped one invasion, but there will be others." Elena stood tall, her expression unwavering. "I'm not done yet." Part 7. Victory and the Hidden Legacy. The battle was over, but the war was far from finished. As Elena walked out of the control room, she could feel the weight of the victory settling on her shoulders. The aliens had underestimated her, and now humanity had a fighting chance. But in the distance, she could still hear the whispers of the unknown. Zether's words echoed in her mind. He was right, in a way. This invasion had been stopped, but there were still threats lurking in the dark corners of the galaxy. The war was bigger than she had realized, and there was so much more to uncover. Elena didn't look back as she made her way to the hangar where the escape ship awaited her. She had done what no one thought possible. She had turned the tide in humanity's favor. But she knew the real fight was just beginning. As the ship lifted off, Alina's mind raced with the information she had uncovered. The invasion fleet had been only a small part of a much larger operation. The aliens had planned to invade Earth, but there were others in the galaxy, other forces at work. The true enemy had not yet shown its face. The ship's engines roared as it broke through the atmosphere, heading back toward Earth. Alina looked out the window, watching as the alien base grew smaller in the distance. The battle was over, but the war was not. Her mission had been a success, but it had also opened her eyes to a larger, more dangerous truth. The aliens may have lost today, but they were far from defeated. And as long as there was a threat to humanity, Alina would be ready. She had proven that humans were more than capable of standing up to the greatest threats in the galaxy. And with the knowledge she had gained, she would make sure that humanity's future was secure. But deep down, Alina knew that the true victory wasn't in stopping this invasion. It was in the legacy she had created, the message she had sent. Humanity would not be crushed. Humanity would fight. And humanity would win. The stars stretched out before her, vast and endless. Alina's journey was far from over. But for now, she allowed herself a brief moment of peace. She had done it. She had stopped the invasion, and she had shown the universe what humanity was capable of. As she looked out into the stars, she whispered to herself, "This is just the beginning." Victory and the hidden legacy. The ship's engines roared as it ascended through the atmosphere, leaving the alien base behind. Alina gazed out the small viewport, watching as the sky turned from deep green to the peaceful blue of Earth. Battle was over, and humanity had won for now. But the feeling of victory didn't last long. As the ship continued its journey, she felt an unsettling weight settle in her chest. The invasion had been stopped, but there was more to this war than she could have imagined. The aliens had underestimated her, but they were not defeated. Not entirely. Alina's mind raced with everything she had learned during her mission. The invasion fleet was just one part of something much larger. The aliens had a far-reaching agenda, and she had only scratched the surface. The fleet she had stopped was small, but it was part of a larger network of alien forces ready to strike at humanity's heart. Commander Zether's words echoed in her mind. "You may have stopped one invasion, but there will be others." The threat wasn't gone. War was far from finished. The ship's sensors began to ping, signaling they were approaching Earth's orbit. Alina pushed the nagging thoughts from her mind and focused on the mission's success. She had accomplished what no one thought was possible. She had defied the odds and stopped the alien invasion. Earth had a fighting chance. As the ship neared the planet, Alina's thoughts turned to her fellow soldiers, her friends back home. She thought about her family, the people who had trained her to become the person she was today. They would welcome her as a hero, but she knew they had no idea what was truly at stake. The real war was not just about surviving. It was about understanding the enemy, learning their weaknesses, and preparing for the next battle. The ship finally broke through the clouds, and Alina saw Earth in all its glory. The familiar sight of blue oceans and green lands gave her a moment of peace, but it was fleeting. The war had just begun, and she would be ready. Back on Earth, the news of her victory spread like wildfire. People celebrated, but Alina knew better. She had done her part, but there was still so much more to do. The aliens had been thwarted, but this was only one battle in a much larger war. The invasion she had stopped was only a glimpse of what was to come. The true enemy was still out there, hiding in the darkness of space. As Alina prepared to land, a new wave of determination filled her. She had shown humanity's strength, and she had proven that humans could stand against the most powerful forces in the galaxy. But now, she had to make sure humanity was prepared for what came next. She had uncovered a web of secrets that the aliens never wanted anyone to find. And with that knowledge, she had to be ready to face whatever came next. The ship touched down on Earth, the soft thud of landing signaling the end of her mission. But Alina knew that this was only the beginning. She stepped out of the ship, greeted by the cheers of her fellow soldiers and commanders. They were proud of her, rightly so. But as they celebrated, she felt the weight of the truth pressing down on her. The war was far from over. The aliens would not give up so easily. And Alina was the one who had to lead humanity to the next stage of the fight. As she walked through the crowd, the faces of her comrades blurred around her. She wasn't a hero, not yet. She was a soldier, and the mission wasn't finished. There would be more battles, more challenges ahead. But Alina wasn't afraid. She had faced the impossible before, and she would face it again. Behind the victory, behind the cheers, there was a new reality. The invasion she had stopped wasn't the end, it was the beginning. The knowledge she had gained, the secrets she had uncovered, would shape humanity's future. She had proved that the impossible was possible. She had proven that humanity could stand strong, even against the most advanced alien forces. Alina didn't know what the future held, but she knew this. Humanity would not be defeated. The aliens had come to Earth thinking they could crush them, but they had no idea what humans were truly capable of. As Alina stood at the heart of the celebration, she finally allowed herself a moment of peace. She had done what no one thought possible. She had stopped the invasion. And now, she had to prepare for the next battle. The universe was vast, and the enemies were many. But Alina knew one thing for sure. Humanity would fight, and humanity would win. The stars above seemed to whisper in the silence of the night, a reminder that the battle was just beginning. Alina was ready. Whatever came. Next, she would face it with the same courage and determination that had carried her this far. She had just begun to write humanity's legacy in the stars. This conclusion ties up Alina's victory, while setting up the next chapter in her journey. The aliens may have been stopped, but there's more to uncover and fight for. The story ends with Alina looking toward the future, ready for the challenges ahead, leaving room for a larger, ongoing conflict. Ask ChatGPT.